All right, welcome everybody. Welcome to the Business Spotlight Series. My name is Mark McNulty. I'm president of Action Coach Bluegrass, Southern Indiana. And today I have Will Greene, who is the owner of Vanguard Cleaning Systems of Louisville and Indianapolis, as our guest. Today we're going to be talking to Will about his business, his journey, how he's grown, the challenges he's overcome. Ask him to share some best practices and just get an idea of what it's really like to own a business like Will's, and see what you can learn. If this is your first time on our channel, be sure to like and subscribe us so that you can get notifications on all future. So Will, welcome to the Business Owner Spotlight, and thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Mark. I appreciate it.
Yeah, so tell us a little bit about Vanguard Cleaning Systems and
Sure.
kind of how you started, and how you ended up in multiple cities, and kind of tell our listeners your story.
Okay. Yeah. So I'll step back to I got involved with Vanguard Cleaning Systems as their first employee on their franchise development team. And so Vanguard itself is a national franchise system, and I worked for the headquarters in California for 6 years. And then my wife and I decided to move to Louisville, and we bought this territory. And so I opened up my business 13 years ago here. And essentially, our business operates within the commercial cleaning space. And the way we're set up is we are actually a franchise company.
Mm-hmm.
And so I sell a franchise to individuals or families that want to have their own cleaning business, or they already have a commercial cleaning business and they want to grow it.
Mm-hmm.
And so what we do is look for folks that are interested in that. And if they partner with us, then we help them get customers. We help them with accounting and collections, and also coach them on how to handle customer service and make sure they're doing a good job of building that rapport and that relationship with their customers. Because as we all know in business, that is a huge part of the equation to having a happy customer, is that you have to have a good level of communication and rapport with them, and they're able to problem solve in a way that makes them feel like they're being taken care of. So with that being said, my team is an office manager who's good at accounting, a few salespeople, a few customer service people. And we are very fortunate to have partnered with some really fantastic business owners here in Louisville. We opened up in Indianapolis earlier this year, and we partnered with some great folks up there as well. And that essentially is our business. We do a lot of cleaning for private schools, industrial and manufacturing buildings, which there are quite a few here in greater Louisville. And we clean several corporate headquarters and general office buildings. That's really our main niches within our community.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about the decision to expand to Indianapolis.
Well, that was something that we were excited about, and we probably would have done before the pandemic. And so that got a little delayed. And to me, it was always, I felt like if I was successful at this business and enjoyed it, that it made sense to add additional territory. And I had already sold Nashville and Cincinnati and a few other cities kind of in our region. So I didn't want to have another territory that I had to fly to. So Indianapolis is a pretty simple drive. Turned out I ended up hiring my vice president, went to IU in Bloomington. He grew up in Southern Indiana, so he has an affinity for Indianapolis. So it just made a ton of sense. So it's a great opportunity for him to help grow that office. We did hire an individual who is from the Indianapolis area. And so he is really running our office, but we support him. And so we just viewed it as a nice opportunity. You know, we're established here in Louisville and very happy with our success. When you open up a second office with the way we're structured, we can leverage a lot of the accounting staff, sales staff that we have here to help grow Indianapolis. So it was just kind of a natural progression in our growth. And I don't envision adding any other markets, but you never know what's going to happen. And as far as a franchise system, we're fortunate to have 50 other operating regions throughout the country that Vanguard owns, or that there are Vanguard owners. So at some point, if someone wanted to sell me Nashville or sell me Cincinnati, I might be interested in that. But yeah, I don't want to get on a plane to go to one of my offices. Life's too short.
Okay. So what's different between the cities? Do is there, you find a big difference between, marketing in Louisville and marketing in Indianapolis?
I'd say it's too early to tell in the first year. I mean, I think a lot of the realities of commercial cleaning when you're looking at, industrial and headquarters and all this office space, it's highly correlated with population. So
Mhm.
the fact that Indianapolis is the state capital and twice as large, has pro teams, has just more of a robust building environment, it was logical that we would feel like we'll be okay. I've been in the industry for 20 years. I think it's just maybe counterintuitive, but a lot of people like to say, well, it's different in my city. I haven't seen that. Typically, it's how you are. And if you have local people running your business, which I have,
Mhm.
you'll be able to connect with people in a very genuine way. Obviously, I'm paying taxes in both states. I'm contributing to job growth in both communities. So I don't see any negatives to the fact that we're headquartered here. And
Mhm.
we haven't really gotten any negative feedback from anyone in Indianapolis. I also think we like to be realistic that you try to think about your janitorial vendor every day. It's not your core business relationship, although it's similar to the garbage man. You care a lot when it's not done well or not done at all. And so we recognize that, but we don't try to overemphasize our brand to our customers. We try to pay attention to what their needs are and what their experiences have been to see if we can be the right solution for them to break that pattern of whatever unhappiness they've had as it relates to their janitorial service.
So when you're looking for, so you're looking for franchisees and you're looking for clients.
Absolutely, to pair up with those franchisees. And so our ability to match resources up with the capabilities that are needed to keep that building clean at the right level is something we take a lot of pride in, and we've developed that skill over many years. And so that is absolutely right. We're always selling. Our franchisees always want to grow, but they want the right accounts at the right price. And so that is always the challenge in sales, is that you have to make sure that you make it a win for the customer and it works with their budget. They also want to get the right level of service. The franchisee has labor cost, equipment and supplies cost. So they have to make money. They're not going to do it just to say they have another customer.
Right.
That's the income they need to pay for their kids' school or buy their new house or replace their car or buy more equipment for their business. So that is always the friction point. And so not every customer is the right customer for our franchisees.
Okay.
And we've adjusted that over time.
Mhm.
A lot has changed in the world. You probably didn't notice, but the last couple of years, a few things have altered the way people do business and
Right.
how many people are actually going into their offices. So we've had to make quite a few adjustments to react to that. And, as a result, it's just a different marketplace, and it's harder to get in front of the right customer at the right time.
Right.
That's something I think everyone has experienced.
So, so on the franchisee side, what makes a better franchisee? An existing company that wants the systems and the support, or somebody starting from new? What's more typical?
Based on the type of customers that we're securing now, it's typically better to have someone who's already owned their own business,
Okay.
because we know that they can scale and they can manage a team. And in the old world, 15, 20 years ago, and we thought it was great to have folks that were going to go out and clean their own customers all the time, because if they're an owner, they're going to do a great job.
Right.
They care a lot. It affects them directly in their pocketbook. But the reality is now, with cleaning larger private schools and industrial buildings and some of the entities that were able to get the right accounts for our franchisees, they need to have a team. They may need to have some supervisors. They can't be in all places at once, and they can't allocate the time to be in multiple really high demand clients. And so we are definitely more focused on individuals that already have their own business.
Okay.
And the good thing about the way we're structured with our franchise agreement is we don't have any non-compete language. We encourage our franchisees to have their own business. We encourage them to keep their own book of business. We're not asking them to get us involved with their existing clients. That's not something that, as a business owner, I would be excited about.
Oh,
And so I
that's
try to
very
put
unique.
myself in their shoes.
Yeah.
And so we're just trying to help them grow in addition to what they've already built.
That's very unique. And that's, I could see that being really powerful.
We
You're
think it
getting
is a
best of
good way to
both
start the
worlds.
relationship,
Yeah.
to build that trust and that transparency. We also send all of our franchisees a copy of the signed agreement with the full proposal to the customers.
Mhm.
So they know exactly what the real transaction is going to be and what they're going to be getting paid. And so that there's no ambiguity there, because to us, If they don't trust us and want to be partnered with us, why would they ever work really hard to take care of their customers that Vanguard has provided? They're going to spend a lot more time on the customers that they got on their own, because they may feel, if they feel like we're not treating them in an honest, transparent way.
Okay. So let's talk about the clients that you're cleaning for. So what's an ideal client for you, and why would they pick you?
Yeah, we love private elementary schools, and they have a very clearly defined need. You know, they might have 300 to 600 kids, 800 kids running around, and all these teachers, and so they're hitting the building pretty hard. The bathrooms, common areas, the cafeteria. And so what has happened over time is a lot of the folks that were career janitors at these schools have retired, and no one's replacing them. And so many of these schools have now, you know, accepted the reality of outsourcing, and they keep folks during the day that help them out with maintenance, toilet breaks. We got to put some snow melt out because it's snowing. Someone had an accident in the gym during the day. They can take care of all those things. And then our team comes in at night, and they're specialized and they're focused on doing the deep clean. They don't have to worry about it. Industrial buildings, same thing. They no longer can afford the time and the investment into recruiting a maintenance staff to do the cleaning. They're struggling just to find people to work at the actual plant to actually build the products that they want to sell. So that has been a clear trend even longer than the schools, is for them to outsource. And we think the reason why our customers are happy in those areas, those two key areas, is that we have the teams that like doing that type of cleaning. We're not trying to get a bunch of folks that like to clean restaurants to go clean at a school. We're matching people up with what they're good at and what they want to do. We take a lot of time and invest a lot of time with our franchisees to understand that. And we let the results teach us on what the reality is and what the next opportunity should be for their business. We love working in corporate headquarters. We have some really nice ones here. Same kind of positive reasons. They have a bigger building. They own their building. So they're not dealing with a property manager who's kind of in between their vendor relationships. And they have a clearly defined need. They take a lot of pride in their building. So they're willing to make that investment into having the right level of cleaning.
So why do they pick you instead of your competition?
You know, I think for us, we think there's multiple factors that add up to that. But number one is we're not overly salesy. We're just upfront. And we want to spend most of our time understanding what got them to this place where they're looking for a solution. They're having some challenges, you know, help us really understand that to see if we can help you. And I think that's number one. Number two is our process of sales. We want to spend additional time with them to make sure that we've heard them, and then we can now present that solution. That's a second meeting. A lot of people just want you to email the proposal because it's easy. We don't want to do that. We need to invest the time that if we're really going to do this, it's going to be a good fit. So you don't have to go out to bid a year from now or 2 years from now. We keep our average customer for 8 years. We want that to continue. We like that longevity. Our franchisees benefit dramatically and their employees from that longevity. And that's two. And I think number three is we're kind of old school. We answer the phone. We respond to emails. We will text message you if we need to. And we have that all set up. But our customer service philosophy is to listen to what the customer has to say, solve that problem, follow up. Don't let the same problems keep repeating themselves. And so that's kind of the narrative we try to create with the customer. Ultimately, we think that style attracts the right type of customer who wants to deal with a partner that treats them the way that they're wanting to be treated. And frankly, for us, that's how we want to be treated. And so when we pick our vendors, we try to look in the mirror and think about who are the vendors we enjoy working with. We want to be like them. We don't want to be the vendor that you hate having to write the check to. And we also don't want to be the customer that you don't want them to call you because you don't want to deal with their complaints. And so I think it works both ways. You have to be real self-aware about that. You know, our core values are proactive and professional. And we want to be professional with everyone. And then lastly is positive. As you can imagine, in janitorial, what most of our contact people are dealing with is not a lot of their coworkers walking by and giving them high fives saying, hey, the toilet paper was restocked last night. Thank you. And it's a complaints department. And so they are only hearing the complaints from their coworkers, and then they have to call us. So what they don't need is for us to make a bunch of excuses or tell them that they're wrong, or I'll try to get back to you in a couple of days. What they want to hear is, I'm sorry. Thank you for sharing that with me. Here's what I'm going to do. And I'm going to work on coming up with a solution so this doesn't happen again. It's very basic.
Mhm.
But when someone's been getting dumped on or having everyone at their office complain and they're blaming them, they need a sympathetic ear, someone who's going to listen to them, but also help them keep it from continuing to happen. People usually get more frustrated when you have inconsistency. It's good for a week and then you have a problem. It's good for 2 weeks and then you have a different problem. They just want it to be consistent because human beings get used to consistency and the noise level and the complaint level goes down.
Okay.
That's been our experience.
All right. Awesome. Thank you. So that's good reasons. That's one of the questions. It's one of my favorite questions, is because it's, and I ask that a lot when I'm out networking, and when there's 3 or 4 of the same industry, at the chamber meeting, it's, well, so why should I send somebody to you instead of to, one of the other 3 people in here that does that? And too many business owners don't have a good answer to that question. And that's so important. That's what makes our marketing work. That's what makes it easier to close sales. And so I'm glad you got a great story and answer there.
Well, and I'll elaborate too. One of the reasons why we don't have a 4th P as price is that we already know what it takes to pay people, especially in this tight labor market.
Right.
And so one of the reasons why our customer retention rate is the last 3 years has been 92%, which is very high in our industry, is that our franchisees are able to pay their employees a fair market wage. And if you're not able to do that, what you have is people that don't want to do the work. They're going to spend less time there, or you're going to have turnover. And if you have either one of those challenges, you're going to have a lot of issues. And that usually stems from a failed solution structure at the front end, which is not enough money in the budget to pay for the cleaning. You and I both know there's a Panda Express right next to my office. They're paying $17 an hour for supervised kitchen labor. That is a shock for a lot of people, especially if you're paying for services at your house or your business. It costs a lot more if you want anyone who's got any real commitment to the job to show up and do it. And so for a lot of our customers, that has been a hard pill to swallow the last few years, but it's just a reality.
Yeah.
We're not creating the labor market. We just have to deal with the results of it.
Right. You just have to live with the market that exists. So awesome. So, so what led to your decision to go from corporate to owning and managing and running a territory?
Sure. I had worked for other people for the first, 12 or 13 years of my career. I'd learned a ton, had some great mentors. I had enjoyed the experience of being able to coach and support the other owners within Vanguard and watch them go through their journey of building their business. And that was just very appealing to me, both from a challenge. And I liked the fact that our culture was one that was predicated on integrity and treating everyone fairly. And that if you do that, you'll get your share of the market. I did not want to be involved in a business where I wasn't sure if I could make ethical decisions along the path and treat people fairly. And so that was a big motivator for me, or a big check. Secondly, I do like to be in charge. I've always enjoyed being the shortstop or the quarterback or whatever it was in life. And so owning your own business gives you an ability to do that. It is a double-edged sword. It can be lonely when you are the one signing the checks. And I recognize that now that I've lived that experience, but everything has trade-offs. And for me on the ledger, I've just really enjoyed it. I loved playing sports growing up. And I think owning your own business gives you that kind of adrenaline and that intensity of the moment. And the reality is some of it's good, some of it's bad. So you have highs and lows, but you're in it. And you take a lot of pride in growing something that you're signing your name. I've got the personal guarantees behind it to prove it. And so that has been a good feeling. And I've, experienced more challenges and surprises and made more mistakes than I ever thought I would. But I am trying to continue to learn from those mistakes and become a better owner every year.
So what's a memorable roadblock or hurdle or challenge that you had to face and overcome, and kind of how'd you work through that?
Well, there's an obvious one.
Yeah.
I'll say another one was my top sales guy who had been on my team for 4 years was diagnosed with terminal cancer out of the blue, and we weren't sure what was going to happen. I stepped into the sales role and I took over the rest of his sales for the next 12 months, and I held the position open for him. The happy ending to that is that he survived. He did have to retire. And then ultimately I handed the sales over to my vice president, but he was more of an operating role. And so that was a pretty big roadblock that you just had no ability to prepare for.
Mhm.
And if I were looking at it from a self-interest, I would have just hired another salesperson. But I didn't want to do that because I wanted to keep the spot open and have loyalty to my employee. And I think that showed a lot to my team. And then ultimately, as an owner, it's nice sometimes to get involved with running your business again because you think about it differently, and maybe see some different opportunities. And so ultimately, I benefited from that, from getting back out in the field. The other obvious roadblock was right around March 15th, 50%, 2020, 50% of our business went away instantly. So that was a rough 18 months to try to dig out of that hole. And we, once we kind of figured out this is the new normal, and we were helping, a lot of our industrial and school customers stayed in business. So we were doing all the disinfecting and doing all these adjustments. But what it forced us to do in a good way was we probably accelerated our tech development internally, maybe 3 years faster, moving everything to the cloud and creating an ability to be more flexible. We upgraded our CRM system to a cloud-based system. And we really just began to operate in a more modern way. And like I said, using text messaging is a great tool because a lot of people aren't in front of their computers as much anymore because they're not sitting in their office every day. And so we've evolved forward in a much, much faster way. And now we're benefiting from that. We operate a lot better. My team has the autonomy they need to work remotely when they need to. And so I think that was a roadblock that paid those dividends. But, the story is not written. This has been an unusual year. Last year was an amazing year for everyone, I think, or broadly speaking. 2022 was a bounce back year from the pandemic. This year is not. And there's a lot of other forces at play there that we don't have to spend time talking about. A lot of them are pretty obvious. Inflation being number one.
Yeah.
But that's just business. You can't control the external factors. So I like the fact that we made positive changes just about what we can control, which is how we operate every day as a team.
So how do you feel it changed you as an owner and a leader?
In a lot of very profound ways. It was very stressful. So I had to figure out how I can deal with stress and challenges a little bit better. I think that now on the back end of it, it's easier to evaluate. When you were in it, it wasn't an easy time to grow and change and adjust. But now coming on the back end of it, I'm a better listener.
Okay.
I recognize that I don't need to solve all of my team's problems. They can solve a lot of them. We're more effective in the sense that we do a much better job of meeting on Mondays, talking about everything that we need to talk about then, so that then people can go and do their jobs the rest of the week. If something surprising happens or there's something we need to check in on, we will. But we really try to maximize that time where we're all together on Monday. And that just took a lot of hard looks at how our meetings were structured, what we were really talking about. Were people preparing for the Monday meeting before they got to the meeting? Or like, oh, I'm going to do that 10 minutes before we sit down. This is not very effective. So we've evolved forward and we're all happier about that. And I think that my leadership style is now softer and less intrusive because you need to foster that trust and empowerment with your team. And since I had spent so many years being an owner operator where I was filling some of the roles, it's hard to break that habit. We did use an outside consultant to help us kind of reset some of our dynamics, an HR consultant, and that was really helpful, more like a management consultant. And so we invested the time and went through that process to really understand how we communicate with each other and how our roles are defined and what helps people feel empowered and successful. Because you think it's intuitive, but what you're really thinking about is what makes you feel empowered and successful, not everybody else you're working with. So that was a real eye-opener for me and extremely helpful. And I felt like having the third party that's more neutral, extremely helpful. It's worth every penny.
What do you see as your number one challenge in the next 9 to 12 months?
Our permanent challenge is getting in front of customers at the right time. Okay. People don't want to be called or emailed anymore. There's no one at the front desk directing traffic. It's just much, much harder to get on people's calendars to even learn about what's going on with their services. And so that used to not be the case at all. 5 years ago, you could just have someone calling businesses and they would set you 3 or 4 meetings a week with qualified customers. And so lead generation is something I think about every day. We've obviously gone the digital route. We've tried a lot of different things, and there's no silver bullet, and we don't ever expect to be one. We do a lot of old school things like knocking on doors, giving people crumble cookies, giving them donuts, and just trying to send out basic letters, handwritten letters talking about, hey, I'd like to connect with you. So there's no one simple answer, but by far that's our challenge because we are very fortunate to have capacity. So if you gave me 10 new customers next month, 1 million square feet total, we could clean them. And so for us, that challenge is always finding that customer when they need a new solution. And we can sit down and meet with them and learn about their needs and be able to craft that solution and move forward. Because no one's picking up or turning on their computer in the morning and saying, I want to do a bunch of research and find some cleaning companies. That's not, even if they're unhappy, that's just not something they're going to do.
Right. Okay. Awesome. Thank you. So we covered a lot here. So now I've got like kind of my last 4 or 5 questions here we'll go through, and just kind of top of your head answers for these. So first of all, what's the key to success for you?
Good communication.
Okay. What's your number one piece of advice for other business owners?
Patience. Have patience.
How does that work?
If you believe you're doing the right things, just don't make quick judgments on whether things are working or not. Sometimes you just have to have patience to work through situations, whether it's with an employee or a customer, or in our case, one of our franchisees. And the best advice I was given is if you have an emotional reaction to something, you should sleep on it. And so that's part of that patience, is to let your mind have time to really think about whatever the challenge is in front of you. And it took me years to kind of get to that point.
Okay. So what's a book you're reading now or that you've read recently that you would highly recommend to other business owners?
I don't know that I would recommend them necessarily to business owners. Yeah. The Power of Active Listening.
Okay.
And let me just double check the title, but I had just listened to this because a really negative habit I had developed during the pandemic was finishing other people's sentences. And that is not a good way to develop relationships and understand what people are trying to communicate with you. And I think it was partly related to masking, partly related to my personality. But we all get to points in conversations where we're searching for that word. That's not an opportunity for you to give that person a word. And this book really talked about it. It's The Power of Listening by Damian Blair.
Okay.
So it doesn't say active listening, but it's talking about how to become an active listener.
Okay.
And to simplify it, a lot of it boils down as the urge we all have to fight. Don't think about what you're going to say next. Don't think about how you relate to their comments or their story or their problem. Just let them tell it to you. You just wait. And it's really hard to slow that down because our brains are so high powered. It's easier for you and I to think of like 3 or 4 other things we might want to say to each other as we sit here. But that doesn't make you a good listener. You're not really hearing what they're saying. You're not paying attention to their emotional cues, what they're trying to share with you. And frankly, a lot of times it makes sense to circle back with them and say, are you really saying that? Do I understand what you're saying correctly? Because here's what I'm hearing. Because that may give them an opportunity to say, well, that's not really what I meant. And it lessens or lowers the chances of miscommunication or misunderstanding, or worse, having that person feel like you're not really paying attention. And you and I are not spring chickens. People are highly distracted. There are so many meetings I go to where people have their cell phone face up on the table. That's not doing a really good job of listening or staying present in the moment. So yeah, it's a great book. I mean, it's dry, but it gives you some good insight as to ways to just hone your skill and craft of being a good listener.
Yeah. And it ties back to what you said is one of your biggest lessons and growth areas was learning how to listen more. And
yeah, I mean, as soon as an employee would start to give me a problem or talk about something, I would just, bam, here's the solution. As opposed to, well, why don't you tell me how you think you might be able to solve that? Or what have you already tried? Let's talk about it a little more deeply before I give you any input.
Right. Okay. All right, so last quick question here. So if you had to choose one area of your business that you could improve or change tomorrow, what would it be?
Well, that would be kind of addressing our main problem, which would just be inability just to schedule more meetings with customers, to simply learn about their needs in a way that the challenge, of course, is to make people feel like, well, you're going to keep trying to chase me down and sell me and be a distraction for me. And that's not really the way we operate our business. But unfortunately, a lot of salespeople have high pressure quota situations and they have to push.
Right.
And so that's not the way. So magically, if there were a way for us just to say, hey, look, we're not going to pressure you. We're not going to chase you and be a distraction. We just want to learn about your situation. But I don't know if there's a way to necessarily change that. Right. And that's okay. You know, we've gravitated towards the industries where people value our service. If you had asked me that question 10 years ago, I would say, I wish people appreciated cleaning service more. But post-pandemic, people appreciate cleanliness a lot more. It's a good thing.
Yeah, that's changed. So if before I get to my last question, so if a cleaning company was interested or an individual was interested with experience in becoming part of the Vanguard team, how would they, what's the best way to go about doing that?
Yeah, the simplest thing is just to submit an email form on our website at info@vanguardcleaningky.com. And then what happens is they just fill in a little basic information on themselves. It goes to our team. We contact them, and that kind of starts the conversation.
Okay. And what if the owner of a private school was listening and decided, hey, I want to talk to those guys? Same question. How would they engage with you?
Yeah, they can go to do the same thing, or there's a Let's Talk button on our website, or they can always just call us directly as well, you know, at our phone number. But, you know, all of the above. There's a website form they could submit as well with just the basic info of what they're looking for. But if it's simpler for them just to call, you know, we answer the phones during business hours, and we get voicemails that go to our email. And that's just 502-855-8500.
Okay. Awesome. All right. So my last question. So what inspires you most today?
I think what inspires me the most today, and I kind of alluded to the fact that 2023, there's just all these headwinds of the negative news that we get inundated with, unfortunately, is I am inspired on a daily basis by all the different people that I read about that are either trying to help others in need, and all the people that are trying to come up with innovative solutions to address some of the larger issues that we're faced with, whether it's food security, climate issues, pollution issues, educational issues. And I just really got a huge amount of inspiration. I was invited to go to the Kentucky Refugee Ministries annual fundraiser that was at the Speed Art Museum. And a man from South Sudan who had immigrated to the US and to Kentucky specifically 15 years ago, he related his story. And the thing that really struck me the most, because he went from a refugee camp in Syria, which is very challenging, gets off the plane in Kentucky and was met by volunteers from Kentucky Refugee Ministries at the airport. And they set him and his family up And here he is 20 years later, and he's a team leader at Amazon, has 5 daughters in high school and college. And it's just an amazing story because those people cared about someone that they owed nothing to. They were just helping people out that were in need. And so when you hear stories like that, it fills my cup to know that there's just a lot of good out there in the world. You're just not going to have that dominate the headlines because it's not as interesting for people to read for whatever reason.
Right.
So yeah, that inspires me every day. Just that fact that there's still a lot of caring, good people out there. They're doing amazing, selfless things on a daily basis just because it's the right thing to do.
That's a powerful story you tied to that. So thank you so much for sharing that.
Absolutely.
That's just an important message for the world right now, which is crazy.
We shouldn't be discouraged.
Place.
Yeah. Good people are not in the minority. You're just not, you can't use the news as your barometer to evaluate that.
So, well, thank you. Oh, well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today. I've learned a lot, and I'm sure our viewers and listeners are going to learn a lot as well. So I thank you for your time. And this has been Mark McNulty with Action Coach Bluegrass and Will Greene with Vanguard Cleaning of Louisville and Indianapolis. And thanks so much for listening to us, and stay tuned for the next episode. So thank you very much, folks.